We got to become lawyers, I guess, George, is the next step in all of this is to try to wade through all of this. But Pete Thamel and others reporting he's probably at the forefront of this. A ton of tweets concerning Florida State versus the ACC and the grant of rights.
Absolutely. And I'll go ahead and read the one that caught my attention earlier, just because this the sheer, just the joke of it. But it says Florida State has chosen to breach its contractual obligations. It has violated its contractual promise not to challenge the validity or enforceability of the grant of rights. So basically what they're saying is, oh, just you're not even allowed to challenge it. Like this is so this bodes very well for Florida State. And I think any future ACC teams looking to get out of this thing, they're really, really worried. They do not want this out in the open, but I think this attempt has been futile. And there's several different amendments in there, but basically what they're saying is Florida State in 2013 and 2016, when these things got hamstrung in there, when they offered these, these do yes or no, like you're either in or you're out type deal, things, they're trying to say, well, you agree to not even broach our authority. You're just going to agree. You're never going to want to look inside this thing. We're going to keep it in this conference up here under lock and key, and that's it. Unfortunately for them, that's not how the world works. Contracts, rules, they're all made to be broken. That's the whole point of the court process. If it was that simple, if you could just do that in a contract, we would have no need for the courts or anything like that. So all I can tell for the ACC is to buckle up, Buttercup, because it's coming.
Yeah, so I got to think that it's unreasonable for anyone that's going to be signing a contract to have not read the terms of the contract, or not to have access to look at the grant of rights and just to agree to a number of conditions, but not actually look at the grant of rights. So not understanding that part of it. The second part of it is, I guess, it should be, although legal things get quite complicated in terms of wording and interpretation, but should be fairly clear that that it would be stated in there. There was one thing that you mentioned just about challenging or breaking the grant of rights. We've been over that. Certainly, I'm sure you've posted a ton of content. We have discussed it here for months and months and months. On the main channel as well, brought in all sorts of different people to give their perspective on it, and it's definitely a point of argument. Otherwise, it wouldn't be much of a fight, because you can certainly read that grant of rights and in some ways understand why it seems like it's unbreakable, but in other ways, Florida State obviously feels confident, and other schools feel confident. Looks like Clemson is waging its own war and getting ready that this can be broken.
Because I love the competition. Yeah, I was just going to say, like you said, we got to become lawyers. We've had Danielle Kelly on our show. I've seen Doug Rohan from the Rohan at Law. I've seen him on some different shows. The Florida State fans that are lawyers are really getting some action on the podcast circuit. So that's pretty cool. But, it's like seems pretty unprecedented. Like, why can you have that clause in? Like, it pretty much that in clause saying you can't even, you can't even challenge it. It's basically like, why would you need that unless there was something illegal or unenforceable in there? You know what I mean? It's like trying to have an NDA within a contract. Like you here sign it, but you can't even look at it. It's really sketchy, and I don't see how any reasonable judge would uphold that. They're gonna have to, if they want this thing to go away, they're going to take it to court. This stuff is going to come out. They're going to have to prove it on the merits of the contract. They're not going to be able to just say, oh, well, they weren't even allowed to challenge it. They signed away their rights. Just too many moving pieces, too many different people in place, at the different schools that signed it. It's just a lot of stuff in there. Those lawyers are going to be able to figure out a way to get past it. But it's just funny to see kind of, them putting this out there, this narrative.
Yeah. So folks, if you're not aware, forgive us on this one. This stuff just came out in the last 30 to 45 minutes. So I have not looked at it at all. I was preparing for the show. I was looking through transfer portal and recruiting classes and all of that business. Brought George on, and right about the time that I was bringing George on, as we were going live, I saw this come down, and I'm just starting to look into it. The first thing that strikes me is there, again, where at least I'm taking this from the P. Thamel reports on his Twitter, but quote, Florida State has chosen to breach its contractual obligations. Like you said, George, it has violated its contractual promise not to challenge the validity or enforceability of the grant of rights. Why would the ACC not have brought this up at the very beginning, at the very outset of this, when Florida State made any kind of statement, brought up any type of thought that they would challenge it, that the ACC would immediately come back with this and say, boom. Well, why is this happening months and months and months later?
Feels like a grasping at straws. That's why it's getting really like meme to death right now on X, and I'm sure the other social media things as well. Yeah, like what's changed? What brought this amendment along?
Yeah, I think when you boil everything down, I think we're in agreement here that Florida State is going to get out of the ACC. It's just a matter of how much fighting is going to have to take place. Are they going to be able to, between the ACC and Florida State and whomever else wants to leave, but focused on Florida State here, are they going to be able to come up with some type of reasonable negotiation or reasonable parting of the ways? Or is this going to get even messier and bloodier and all of that? And of course, Florida State wants to do it as quickly as possible and save as much money as possible in the process.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Me and Jen have talked about it a ton on our show. Like you've said, we've talked, Spear Addicts has talked about it a ton. James at Den Media Group. We've all talked about it, but man, I've kind of predicted, we've leaned that it would be like the 120 million, the kind of original buyout, but without the extra 400 million over 13 years that it would take to get out. If there was going to be a settlement, but who knows? If maybe they decide to take this thing all the way. I also hold strong and true that there's going to be a settlement. I just can't for the life of me. I think ACC just does not want this stuff out there in the open, and I think this latest motion it's just further proof of that. You know what I mean? Them doing anything possible they can to keep it from coming out. But I think opening their checkbook and saying sayonara to FSU is the only way to safely do this. Or like you said, bloodshed. We get discovery, all that good stuff. I'm here for either way, but I think the most likely thing is settlement for sure.
I don't know who less wants this to come out, the ACC or ESPN, in terms of discovery. Now, in terms of these damages, so another P. Thamel quote here or tweet is, as part of this amended complaint, the ACC is seeking unspecified damages from Florida State. So without going through all of this, I'm guessing that they are claiming that by Florida State just challenging the grant of rights and by simply saying, hey, this is a thing, and they are making the ACC look bad, killing its reputation, killing its prominence in the sport, and therefore the ACC saying, by just challenging this, you have damaged our reputation and our value.
Yeah, and it's just circular logic they're using, because the whole reason we're in this situation is Florida State's a 13-0 conference champ, and they're not good enough to even get in. The ACC isn't out there fighting for Florida State. They're not fighting financially. Also in that document is all those things that they were supposed to do that never happened. So, yeah, it's just one of these things. They filed a suit a couple days before, Florida State even held the Board of Trustees meeting. So it's like, well, how did you do that? Where'd you get the leaked information that knew that they were ever going to be a filing come out of that? So, yeah, like you said, it happened kind of spur of the moment. So we haven't really got to dig in there and see if there's anything, in there, because the way this legal jargon works, a lot of times there'll be one sentence that you find later, like, oh, well, this makes somebody exculpatory here. We haven't got into it but just on the face of it, like you said, it's like, oh, well, no, you're not even allowed to challenge it. Nope, just that breaks it. It's like, I mean, that's a real weak, like that, I mean, they're living in a dreamland if they think they're going to get in there and the judge is going to speak. Yep. Look at here. Look, you signed away your right to even, look at the contract, challenge it, anything. You can't, you got to just go with it till 2036. I don't think that's going to fly.
So this is what hits me next, going to the next Pete Thamel tweet. Everything we've talked about is like serious stuff, but would not necessarily get decided, or nobody would be damaged or hit with any money until they actually go to court or come through with a settlement. This deals with exactly what's immediate right now in terms of the management of the conference and making decisions. Key claim from the ACC, an amended complaint, quote, this court issue a permanent injunction barring Florida State from participating in the management of the affairs of the conference while it has a direct and material conflict of interest, meaning voting and whatever else involved in managing the conference. And of course, we focus on football here. Football season's over. Not that it doesn't need to be managed in the off season, but you've got all these other sports that Florida State is a full member of the ACC and voting and participating in, and suddenly you're telling them immediately that we are not going to include you in the management of the conference?
It seems awful. What's the one I'm looking for? It seems awful, just like
cutthroat,
okay, dude,
spiteful.
Just whatever. Do what you're gonna do. You can swing your sword around. Try to make all these little things stick, but I don't think it's going to change the end result. I think that's been their whole thing. They've been trying to get a hold of the public perception of this thing, like the FSU is just doing something crazy. They're trying to single-handedly ruin college football, and they have the people that are down with the conference, down with the front office people, your Wake Forest, your Dukes, your North Carolina schools, basically doing all these press releases talking about, oh, we're happy with the money, we're this, we're that, right off the heels of them a week before saying how, oh, we just can't compete, we can't afford, we can't keep all our players, they leave every week. So it's just like talking out of both sides of your mouth. I don't think they're going to be able to get ahead of it, but it's very interesting. I can't wait to see. I have a good feeling we're going to hear something from Florida State's representation here pretty quick, with all this dropping here, like we had talked about right here before the show. I'm really curious to hear what Jen has to say on this. I told her that she should come on. She said she may get Cam ready and jump on here and talk to us about it. But yeah, it's something.
Absolutely, that would be great if Jen could drop by and lay down some knowledge for us and her perspective. And again, all this stuff that we've touched upon thus far hits me as, okay, really heavy stuff, but stuff that's not going to affect anything until it's actually decided or won in court or settled, except for this management of the conference. That seems like, wow, we're going to hit you with this immediately.
Direct and material conflict of interest with the purposes and objectives of the conference. What are we doing besides like being undefeated and being this great thing, bringing your TV ratings? Like, I mean, like, I guess just the fact we're arguing to try to get out, or like, what has Florida State done that is in direct and material conflict of the interests and the purposes and objectives of the? I'd really like to know. Can they do another release and let us know what the purposes and objectives of the ACC conference are? Because it's extremely confusing for us out here. It sure seems like it's to just get a free ride for these smaller schools and let them bring in $40-50 million a year, so they can like funnel the money to their basketball program. I don't know. Is that what's going on? Because Wake Forest damn sure ain't spending it on football as much as they want to act like they're the greatest growing this and that. I mean, it's nothing crazy. 1 year of Big Ten money, you could build that stadium twice that they've got over there. So it's like, far be it from me to be the judge, but it's like, goodness gracious. Oh, we're poor. Oh, well, we make plenty of money, plenty coming from the ACC. I really hope Clemson. There's kind of been whispers out here. I don't want anybody, nobody clip this and say George said Clemson's about to come out at such and such date. No, just heard rumors. There's been some different people talking about it. That Clemson is, day by day becoming more anxious and wanting to enter this thing, but we don't know. Do they have a place to go or not? That's the question. They're not on track for the AAU and things like that, like Florida State is. So I think it would have to be the SEC, and I don't know. That's a whole other can of beans to go down. But yeah, it would be nice if there was somebody in this with Florida State. But for right now, it's just going to go along with the vibe of what we've got going on. It's kind of the revenge. You've seen all the Darth Vader memes, FSU against the world, like this year, whatever. What are they going to? They're going to try and lock us out of conference play. We'll see. We'll see what. I don't know what they mean by the management of the conference. How they're going to lock us out of that. Like what say did we have? Like before, like I don't know how materially we were involved in managing the ACC before this thing came out.
So my guess there, and again, that's a fairly vague term, management of the conference, because the conference has to be managed to some degree every day of the year. But if you're talking about really excessive voting and very important decisions, that may happen a couple times a year. So this may not come up anytime soon, but it's going to hit fairly soon at some point where there are decisions to be made where they get everyone together and they have their, I think it's periodic meetings, maybe monthly meetings where they're meeting as a conference and discussing issues and voting. And if they just completely say, Florida State, we are shutting you out of this, wow, what is that going to look like?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So they could shoehorn this meeting up. Maybe they've got plans for that. Maybe they want to get the rest of the people, turn them all against FSU. Maybe they could get some vote through that just absolutely screws us, or could, hey, do y'all want to run a schedule, see what it looks like without FSU? But if they want to do that, if they want to give up on their final year of having this cash cow in there with them, whatever. Well, I'm sure that something will be figured out. And if they tried to make it to where FSU's out in the cold and they've only got 4 out of conference games to play, I think at that point in time, some bigger government offices would get involved and put a stop to that. So seems like a lot of hot air to me. But like I said, it's it's something to talk about. It's like just heads running with all this stuff. I can't wait to see what the retort is from the Florida State law group. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that that's just a big threat. And the reason I say that is, on one hand, you're arguing that you want to keep this team in the conference. You think that they are bound to stay in the conference, but at the same time, you're going to take away their voting rights and their management rights and contribution to manage the conference. Well, that doesn't make any sense. So again, that sounds like a big threat. And that's the one that hits me kind of strange, in that that's kind of different than everything else, because that could come up here soon. All right, Jen, there's craziness going on with the ACC, and we just got slapped with about a ton of information in the last 45 minutes to an hour. I can guess how this hits you, but let us know your take.
I find it funny. I'm laughing at it. I kind of feel like the ACC just showed their hand, to be honest. I feel like this is good news for Florida State. I think a settlement is incoming, and I just don't see it lasting any longer, really. I know a lot of people are saying a year to 2 years. I honestly think this thing is going to be settled, and we'll see a number by July 1st. That's what I think. Now, I could be wrong, but for me, the fact that they now want to say, oh, they can't have a vote because they want to challenge this, they want to do this. It honestly tells me that they're kind of worried about this case. I think, yeah, to me, it's hilarious. It's absolutely delusional to do that. And I honestly thought their first lawsuit was wild to me, because they were trying to say or sue Florida State for something they had to legally do because of the state of Florida, which is bizarre. I mean, I think legally, when Florida State is supposed to do that publicly, that's what they have to do. with Florida laws. They have to do that publicly. They are a state school. So for me, yeah, good. Bring it on. I'm glad the ACC is upset. I'm happy. That kind of just showed me, yep, we're on the right track. Usually when you get these types of things, you're hovering over that target pretty well. That's what I say.
No, I think you're definitely on it, because when all this started hitting the media, and the Board of Trustees meeting that really got it rolling and really brought it to the forefront, and we knew that, okay, they're out in front of this. And there was all sorts of speculation over, okay, well, if the ACC is going to hold tight to this, they're going to try to hold to this grant of rights. This could drag on for years and years and years and years as Florida State tries to fight this. But nobody wants to do business. It's one thing when you do business and you've got a bad situation and, you know, you got a private business, nobody knows about it. But all this is out there for everyone to see. And if there's a worse look for a conference, it's that arguably your best sports brand, best football brand doesn't want to be there, is fighting with you, is exposing your ineptitude, your mismanagement of the brand and the negotiating rights over the last decade, and you're just going to kind of let that go and just let it. That would be one thing. The second thing that I hit George with that really stuck out to me, that was a bit different than the rest of it, was this whole, we're going to suspend your ability to manage the conference. Like, we're taking your vote away and you're not going to like be in on meetings and help manage the conference. Seriously? Yep. Now that's, to me, points to what you're talking about, Jen, about this coming to a head really soon, because I can't imagine Florida State's just going to be okay with, you know.
What's up, Jen? Are they going to vote us off the island, or what's going on?
I mean, it seems like they're about to, right? And I think this also proves some of Florida State's points in their lawsuit. If you look at what they said about Notre Dame getting a vote. So Notre Dame gets a vote in the conference. Perfect. They really don't do anything other than play in, you know, Olympic sports or whatever it is that they do. But they get to vote on the conference. They get a vote. This is more bad mismanagement by the ACC. And I think just, I don't know what their goal is with this type of language, except for maybe they think it's going to strong arm Florida State a little bit more. I do think Florida State really does want that discovery. I think they do. I think they're being talked off a little bit of a ledge here. I think some of the attorneys around them are saying, hey, I get it. We all want to see it. It'll be fun, right? It'll be great for, you know, post-game shows or, you know, ESPN or whoever to talk about. That's going to be great, and fans would love it. But you kind of need to go to the table and sit down and negotiate here. So I think the ACC doing this is strong arm, or trying to strong arm Florida State to get to those negotiations, because I don't know right now that they've been all that interested in it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right. It's like, you're going to take our vote away. Meanwhile, you're letting Notre Dame vote against the interest, because they have no interest. They're not even in the football conference. Exactly. And they're getting a vote against Florida State's interest every time we do one of these things. So that was a very good point.
I think it's also in that, if you look at their lawsuit, it was that Notre Dame got the vote for Cal, Stanford, and SMU to get invited. And now they want to take Florida State's away when they just, you know, were the most watched team and all these things in the conference. And it's like nobody, and even in their down years, we're still the most watched team in the conference. So I just, it's really a strong arm tactic. I don't think it's anything that is alarming more than funny. I think the ACC is grasping at straws a little bit here. And I think what you're going to see is my prediction is going to be a little bit over 1 million, maybe 120 to get out. And now, could they negotiate that down? Yeah, I could see it. There are some people who are thinking 50 to 75 who are way smarter than I am. But I also think Florida State wants this done. They want that baggage out, and they want to be able to make themselves available first. That's their goal. That's their goal.
And just to clarify for everyone, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong on this, the reason we see these amounts at 650, 700 million is it's that 120 starting figure, and then it's the addition of all those home football games and how much TV money that brings in for the life of the contract. So that's obviously going down each season, but it's still a ridiculous number. So the 120 is just that starting point for breaking the contract.
Yeah, and I think where Florida State is on pretty good ground here is the fact that ESPN has that opt-out in 2027. So I think they would be able to get out of that and not have to. I think they're going to be able to negotiate it with that because of that opt-out. And if anybody thinks that ESPN is going to pick up all these things if Florida State, Clemson leave, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you guys. I don't. Because
feels
ESPN,
like Clemson would be the
backbreaker. Yeah, if with that contract, ESPN can walk away at any time. So Florida State's going to argue that the ACC went into that contract pretty much in bad faith, allowing that amendment in there. And that's where I feel like the negotiation is going to take place. That's why I was saying the 120 for the exit fee is where I could see it going, and them not even getting into that grant of rights, arguing it down or trying to enforce it with them. Because should that go to court and Florida State is actually allowed to negotiate out of that grant of rights legally, like in a court of law, that's when you're going to see other teams do the same thing. I think the ACC is going to try and put a top on this bowling pot and see if they can get away with it. That's what I think.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.